What's up, guys? This is Kyurem from the Trinity of Lift, and today I bring all of you guys an updated deck profile of my Chaos Dragon deck. And this deck did get hit by this past April 2015 ban list, although not directly, I guess you could say. It did get inadvertently hit because things like Tour Guide and Blaster got hit, either they got banned or limited. So, I did have to rework this deck a little bit to compensate for all those ban list changes. But honestly, even though things did get hit within this deck, I still feel that the deck is fairly strong, and the overall potency of this deck hasn't changed a bit. So, I wanted to bring this updated list to all of you guys, so let's get right into it. Okay, so starting us off, we have the triple Lightpulsar Dragon. This is Chaos Dragons. I don't really need to explain why we're running 3 Lightpulsar Dragon. He is essentially the namesake dragon of this deck, as you want to just see him as early as you possibly can, because he will be allowing you to go into your bigger plays and whatnot. So you want to see your Lightpulsar as soon as possible, which is why we run 3. Moving on, we have the 2 Dark Flare Dragon to back up our Lightpulsars. The reason why I have bumped Dark Flare up from 1 to 2 is because literally I just wanted another target for Lightpulsar. One thing that I did notice with my old list is that I did run only 1 Dark Flare before, and that only gave Lightpulsar 2 targets to float into whenever he wanted to float into something. And I did find times when if Lightpulsar were to get destroyed, I didn't have anything to float into. So I did add the second Dark Flare just so I have more targets. His effect is also pretty cool if you ever have to use it. Next up, we have the 2 Black Dragon Collapse Serpent and the 2 White Dragon Wyverburster. Again, pretty standard lineup for almost every Chaos Dragon deck. We run around 2-2 because 3 of both dragons will clog, and this deck does have a balanced amount of light and dark, so we do run an equal amount of both of them. They are the ones that will get us into our rank 4 plays or our Synchro plays fairly easily, as a level 4 is pretty easy to manipulate, as well as they also float whenever they leave the field. So that also keeps your hand advantage up, so you don't keep negging yourself with your plays. So we do run this ratio of baby dragons. Finally, for the last dragon, Chaos Dragon part of this deck, I should say, we have the 1 Dark Arm Dragon, the 1 Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, and the 1 Eclipse. The Eclipse is obviously here to search both our Dark Armed and our Red Eyes out. We have Red Eyes here to revive any one of our dragons from the grave, except Dark Arm, I guess you could say. And speaking of Dark Arm, we have Dark Arm in here because he is just such a good card. Okay, and then finally, for the last Chaos monsters, we do have the 2 Chaos Sorcerer and the 1 BLS, because this is a Chaos deck. And whenever there's Chaos, there's always Chaos Sorcerer and BLS, of course. Now we get right into the engines within this deck. We start off with the 1 Tour Guide, and then we follow up that 1 Tour Guide now with triple Skarm Malebranche of the Burning Abyss. Now then, this is the thing that did get hit, as Tour Guide did go to 1. So the way that I compensated for that is that I literally just added 2 more Skarms over the 2 Tour Guide. The reasoning I did this is because Skarm will search out our Tour Guide, so because this deck now is a little bit more focused on milling, as you'll see in a second, I want to mill a Skarm as soon as possible and have the highest chance possible to mill a Skarm. That way I can get my Tour Guide search ASAP, as trying to draw into 1 single Tour Guide is pretty darn hard. So we have the 3 Skarm to help us try and get to our Tour Guide as fast as possible. And another reason why I feel that this is still not a bad engine at all, even though Tour Guide did get hit, is because even if you say mill your Tour Guide or you use your Tour Guide, we can still use the Skarms for things like Tribute Fodder, as we do not run back row in this deck, so we can usually special summon Skarm for free. And just like little things like that, and having Skarm essentially as free fodder is always nice to have, and it'll help keep our plays live as much as possible. Following that engine up, we go right into the Lightsworn engine of this deck, starting off with triple Lila, Lightsworn Sorceress. She is our back row removal, obviously, within this deck, and she is very essential in clearing out our opponent's back row so that we can make big push plays. Following Lila, we have 3 Raiden, Hand of the Lightsworn. Obviously, we have Raiden here for his level 4 tuning abilities, as well as he helps us mill during our turn rather than having to wait till our end phase, so he can make our plays live during our turn. Now then, we have even more Lightsworns, which is one of the big notable changes I should say I made to this deck, with 3 Lumina, Lightsworn Summoner. The reason why we have Lumina now is because, firstly, Lumina is a level 3, and I should mention that it is very relevant that she is a level 3, because with her, we can make this big guy over here. And obviously, having Lumina within this deck now, what it does help us do within this deck is it helps us recur our Light Swords if we do mill them or if we have them in our grave for whatever reason. We can continually get them back with Lumina and either make synchro plays, or at the very least we can get big mills at the end of our turn. That way, we can have our Chaos plays almost always live 100% of the time, and we'll be able to swarm the field with our Chaos monsters just that much easy. So we have the 3 Lumina. Moving on, we have, speaking of mills, we have 2 Card Trooper. Obviously, for that mill, it does provide us a 3-card mill during our turn, so it can help us get our Chaos plays going just that much earlier. We follow that up with 2 Plague Spreader Zombie. Again, this is the guy we do actually want to mill because we can stack our cards from our hand on top of our deck to get him onto our field so we can have easy level 2 tuning. We also have Plague Spreader here to help us go into our bigger boss monster sinkers, I guess you could say, like Beals and Void Ogre Dragon. So we have the 2 Plague Spreader for that reason. And then finally, to round off the last couple monsters, we do have the 2 Gores. Gores is here because we do not have much defense, I guess you could say, within this deck. If we do start off with a slow hand, we don't really have anything that we can really do about it. So that's why we do have the Gores in here, so that even then, when we do have slow hands, we can at least have a potential defense with Gores. So we do have the 2 Gores, and I know with the new ban list we can run 3, but in my opinion, a third is really unnecessary because with the amount of damage people can make on board, you usually won't be able to survive a third hit for free from your opponent to activate the 3rd Gores. So in my opinion, 2 is just fine. So that is it for the monstrous, get it? The monstrous 34 card lineup. Moving on to this, the whole 6 spells that we do play to round off the main deck. We start off with 2 Charge of the Light Brigade. This is really self-explanatory. We kind of want to get to our Light Swords ASAP so that we can start milling through our deck. And we do have the 2 Charge of the Light Brigade so that we can search for them as well as we can mill. So we have the 2 Charge for that reason. Moving on, we have the 3 Solar Recharge. Since we do run a larger Lightsworn engine within this deck now, we can afford to run 3 Solar Recharge as it allows us to mill our deck as well as it can help us dig that extra 2 cards into our deck to hopefully get into our Lightpulsars or whatnot. And I should say that it's good to have 3 Solar Recharge because although there are times when you might have it dead, believe me when I say it's going to be extremely rare because you do have 9 targets for Solar Recharge, as well as you have 2 search cards for those 9 targets. So whenever you do draw into a Solar Recharge, majority of the times you will have it live. Now then, for the 40th card and final card of this deck, we do run the single Soul Charge because we do mill quite a bit. So having the Soul Charge to summon back all our monsters that we did mill and make a pretty darn unbreakable board is pretty fantastic. So that is it for the 40 card main deck. Moving on, starting off with the extra deck, we have the 1 Dante. Dante, I said it in my last video, Dante is probably one of the best things you can go into within this deck. If you can get a Turn Guide first turn somehow, going into Dante first turn, it's probably one of the most ideal plays you can do in this deck. And even though you might not go into him first turn as much now, still having the access to the Dante to keep milling our deck away so that we can make our big summons is always helpful. Following up Dante, we have the other level, rank 3 of this extra deck. We have the 1 Levier. Since all our Chaos monsters banish monsters from our graveyard, we can have Levier within this deck to get those banished monsters back. I should mention that whenever you do banish your monsters from your grave to do your summons, you should methodically think about what you're banishing. What I personally like to do is banish my Lightsworn monsters so that I can summon them back with Levier, as all the Lightsworn monsters within this deck can be summoned by Levier, as well as they also all have powerful effects that are very useful. So having those guys in our banish pile for the Levier plays is always nice. Next up, we have 2 rank 4s, and starting off with the 1 Castel, because Castel can spin things back to deck. Castel is amazing. Castel is a staple. We should run Castel. And something I'm testing right now, I have 1 Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon within this deck. One thing that I did notice before is that whenever I did have to go into a rank 4 play and I wanted to push for damage, it was pretty much near impossible. As what I did run before was the Castel and the Exciton Knight. However, the thing was, I didn't like how I didn't have no rank 4 Axis big power play, I guess you could say. So, I decided to throw Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon in this deck because he is probably one of the biggest rank 4s that you can probably make, as his ability will usually be bumping him up probably past about 3,000. At least, usually it's going to be at least, what, 3,200 or so, at least, majority of the time. So I do have the Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon in here, just so I can make a really big monster with just a rank 4. Finally, for the last XYZ we run the one rank 6 Constellic Ptolemy M7, because we only really need one rank 6 in this deck. There isn't many rank 6s that are better than the level 6 that we do run in the main deck, as the only level 6s that we do run are Chaos Sorcerer and Lightpulsar Dragon. So we really don't need another rank 6 over our very good level 6 monsters, I guess you could say. The only reason why M7 is in here, because M7 can really actually do a lot of work for this deck, as what it can do is it can compulse one card on either player's field, or it can compulse back a card from either player's grave and sends that card back to their respective owner's hand, which is pretty darn cool. So let's say you mill your BLS or something like that, or maybe like a tour guide from your deck and now it's in the graveyard. You can actually use M7 to bounce that card back to your hand from your graveyard and then use it for your own plays. So in that sense, it's also like a recycler of the deck. So we do have the one M7 for that. Now then, we move on to the white Synchro cards, starting off with the one Armades, because Armades gets around a lot of things like Necrons of Valkyrius, he gets around back row, he gets around Honest, he gets around a lot of problematic things. So we do have the one Armades, so we can push through. We have the one Goyo Guardian now as our generic level 6, and having the Goyo Guardian within this deck so we can steal our opponent's monsters and then synchro with them is also pretty nice. Moving on to our level 7s, we have the one Black Rose Dragon, because we can nuke the board as often as we ever want to or need to, and we really won't care ourselves if we do nuke our own board, as it'll only fuel our grave. So we do have the Black Rose Dragon to help make our big blowout nukes, and so we can clear our opponent's board and then push for some games. Then we actually do run another level 7 Synchro in the form of Michael the Arc Lightsworn. Now that we do run Lumina, we can actually make Michael pretty consistently within this deck. So having the access to that spot banish removal is a very powerful thing to have. As well as I should mention that his life point regeneration effect when he is destroyed is also pretty helpful, as again, like I said, Chaos Dragons doesn't have a really good defense at times. So having that life point gain whenever we do need it also can just help us keep going in our game to ensure that we don't get OTK'd. Now then, we start the level 8s with pretty much the bread and butter of the level 8s in my opinion. We have the two level 8s here in Scrap Dragon and Stardust Spark Dragon. These are probably one of the best generic level 8 synchros in my opinion, as Scrap Dragon will give us instant removal of 2 cards, one on our field and one on our opponent's. And since some of our cards do float within the deck, we can't afford to blow up our own cards sometimes. Spark Dragon is in here, obviously, for its defensive aspect. And another cool thing is that if you ever figure out a way to get both of these guys on the field at the same time, there is a pretty nifty combo where you can essentially get Scrap Dragon destruction cards for free, because you can actually target Spark Dragon with Scrap Dragon's effect, and then blow up one card on your opponent's field, and then change Spark Dragon onto himself so that he doesn't get destroyed by Scrap Dragon. So that in and of itself is pretty darn cool. Next up, we go to our dark level 8 synchros in the form of Void Ogre Dragon and one Beals of the Diabolic Dragons. These guys are here just as our Plague Spreader synchro monsters, I guess you could say, as we usually will be making them with a Plague Spreader and a Lightpulsar Dragon. So having the Void Ogre is pretty good, because outside of Lila, we don't have any back row. Well, we do have back row removal in Lila, I guess you could say, but we don't have back row negation, which is something that Void Ogre does provide for our deck, so that we can actually make Void Ogre with no hand, I should mention, and then we can push safely without having to worry about any problematic back row. I should mention that again, Void Ogre does require you to have no hand in order to have its effect live, but the way that we have our deck set up with our Luminas pitching stuff from our hand to the grave, and having our Light Pulsars requiring us to pitch 2 cards, a light and a dark, from our hand to the grave to special summon it from grave, we usually will be, I guess you could say, losing hand advantage, so we will be having Void Ogre live majority of the time. Although I should mention that you shouldn't worry about losing hand advantage, because that'll only fuel our grave, which is our primary resource pool. So we have Void Ogre, and then we also have the Beals, because Beals is crazy. Beals is almost immune to every form of removal besides bouncing and destruction. So having that 3k stick that really doesn't care about anything is also pretty darn nice. Finally, we have our last two synchros, which are our big, beefy, large level synchros in the form of Star Eater and Leo. Leo is here because still there are quite a few targeting effects. Maybe Trishula is one of the few exceptions because for some reason Trishula does not target. But whatever. We still have Leo here to stop our opponent's targeting effects. And so we can just have that 3.1k stick on field that really doesn't want to get targeted at all. So that's pretty cool. And it helps us establish a big board that will be almost unbreakable. And Starter, in that same aspect, will help us get unbreakable boards where Star Eater can push through our opponent's back row. And whatever they might want to try and flip up, Star Eater probably won't care. So we have these two large level synchros for those plays. Alright guys, so that is it for my updated Chaos Dragon deck profile of this April 2015 format. Please let me know what you guys think of this updated list down in the comments section below. And as always, this is Kyurem from the Trinity of Lift, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.